In a nation built on the promise of freedom, but tragically steeped in the cruelty of slavery, one woman defied the very foundation of the South. She was illiterate, 5 feet tall, and suffered from chronic, debilitating pain. Yet she became a strategist, a conductor, a general, and a spy. Her name was Araminta Ross, but history knows her as Harriet Tubman, the Moses of her people. This is the story of the woman who traded her own safety for the liberation of hundreds, leading them out of bondage again and again. Born Araminta Minty Ross around 1822 in Dorchester County, Maryland, she knew only labor and violence from her earliest memory. The fifth of 9 children, her parents, Harriet Ritt Green and Ben Ross, were enslaved by the Brodess and later the Thompson family. Her life began as property, valued only for the work her body could produce. The daily threat of sale, of being permanently separated from her parents and siblings, was the psychic wound of her childhood. The Deep South's economic engine ran on this fear and the constant dismantling of black families. This instability forged in Minty a fierce loyalty to her family and a profound hatred for the system that held them. The formative event of her young life occurred when she was just a teenager. Sent to a dry goods store, she stepped between an overseer and a runaway enslaved person. The overseer threw a 2-pound metal weight, striking Minty squarely in the head. The injury was devastating and permanent. For the rest of her life, she would suffer from severe headaches, narcoleptic seizures, and sudden blackouts. But for Harriet, this trauma was also a spiritual awakening. She interpreted her seizures as powerful religious visions, believing she was communicating directly with God. These visions fueled her conviction that she was divinely chosen for a great task, to deliver her people to freedom. Around 1844, Minty married John Tubman, a free black man. However, Maryland was still a slave state, and their marriage provided no protection for her or her family. After her enslaver, Edward Brodess, died, the terrifying prospect of her sale to the Deep South loomed. This peculiar institution allowed no security, even in love. In 1849, Minty changed her name to Harriet after her mother, and facing imminent sale, made her decision. Her husband refused to leave. He was free and content to stay. But Harriet's commitment to self-determination superseded her marriage. She said later, "There was one of 2 things I had a right to, liberty or death. If I could not have one, I would have the other." Harriet Tubman did not wait for help. She ran, following the North Star and relying on an intricate, loosely organized network of safe houses and secret routes, the Underground Railroad. She traversed 90 miles through swamps and woods, navigating a landscape where every shadow was a danger, and every white person a potential enemy. When she finally crossed the line into Pennsylvania, a free state, the contrast was staggering. I looked at my hands to see if I was the same person. There was such a glory over everything, she recalled. She was finally free. But the mission had just begun. Part 2. The Conductor. Most formerly enslaved persons who reached the North focused on building their new lives. Harriet Tubman focused on the people she had left behind. In a radical act of selflessness and bravery, she decided to return to the South. Her first successful mission was rescuing her niece and her children. From 1850 to 1860, Tubman made approximately 13 return trips to the eastern shore of Maryland, personally leading over 70 people to freedom and giving instructions to perhaps another 70. She became the most famous conductor on the Underground Railroad, a network of abolitionists and safe houses stretching across the nation. Tubman was more than brave. She was a brilliant strategist. She planned her missions for the winter months, when the nights were longer and the swamps frozen solid. She worked exclusively on Saturdays, knowing that news of the escape wouldn't be printed in newspapers until Monday, buying the fugitives crucial time. Her methods were strict and demanding. She carried a pistol, not just for protection from enslavers, but to enforce discipline. She famously stated, "You go on or die." In her world, a single tired, terrified person turning back risked the capture and murder of the entire group and all those who helped them. In 1850, the U.S. Congress passed the Fugitive Slave Act, escalating the danger exponentially. The law made it a federal crime to aid a runaway, and required law enforcement, even in free states, to arrest and return escaped enslaved people. This pushed Tubman's operations all the way to Canada. The reward for her capture swelled to over $40,000, an enormous sum for the time. But she was never caught, earning her the nickname Moses for her parallel to the biblical figure who led his people out of Egyptian bondage. Her success she attributed to her divine guidance. Tubman's work was supported by a dedicated network. She found powerful allies among white abolitionists like Thomas Garrett in Delaware and Gerrit Smith in New York. She became an icon and an active participant in the wider abolition movement, consulting with major figures like Frederick Douglass and John Brown. "I know of no one who has willingly encountered more perils and hardships to serve our enslaved people than Harriet Tubman," said Frederick Douglass. Part 3. War and Legacy. When the Civil War erupted in 1861, Harriet Tubman immediately offered her services to the Union Army. Her deep knowledge of the South's terrain, her absolute mastery of secrecy, and her intelligence network made her invaluable. She served in South Carolina as a nurse, a cook, a scout, and a spy. Her role as a spy was critical. She organized reconnaissance missions, gathering intelligence from formerly enslaved people behind Confederate lines, providing the Union with crucial information on troop movements and supply lines. In 1863, Tubman achieved a feat unmatched by any woman, before or since. She became the first woman to lead an armed military operation in U.S. history, the Combahee River Raid. She guided 3 Union gunboats up the Combahee River to disrupt Confederate supply lines and gather intelligence. The key raid was a resounding success. They destroyed bridges and plantations, seizing millions of dollars in supplies and, most significantly, freeing over 700 enslaved people in a single night. She stood on the deck directing the newly freed people, a real-life Moses leading a massive exodus. Despite her tireless service, both as a conductor and a military asset, Tubman was paid only $200 over 3 years. After the war, she spent decades fighting the U.S. government for the back pay and a military pension she was owed, a harsh reminder of the systemic devaluation of black service and female leadership. In her later years, Tubman moved to Auburn, New York, focusing on humanitarian work. She was a tireless advocate for women's suffrage, partnering with figures like Susan B. Anthony, arguing that her own life was proof of a woman's right to full citizenship. Harriet Tubman purchased land in Auburn and dedicated her final years to establishing the Harriet Tubman Home for the Aged, a facility for poor and elderly Black Americans. She spent the last years of her life struggling financially, often supported only by donations and the sale of her biography. She died in 1913, surrounded by friends and family, and was buried with full military honors. She left behind no vast fortune, no corporate empire, but a legacy infinitely more valuable, the undeniable evidence that courage, faith, and moral conviction can change the course of history. Part 4. Legacy and the Enduring Symbol. Harriet Tubman never lost a passenger. Her operational success rate remains one of the most astonishing achievements of the Civil War era. She was a woman who was considered property, yet she commanded troops and outsmarted the most powerful slave catchers in America. Her life is the ultimate contradiction to the notion of servitude. Her story transcends the Civil War. It is a fundamental American epic of self-liberation and revolutionary action. Tubman wasn't merely a helper. She was a CEO of freedom, a master tactician who risked everything to make the American promise of liberty a reality. The life of Harriet Tubman shows us that the greatest power often comes not from wealth or political titles, but from an unyielding moral compass. She remains the single most recognizable and revered figure of the Underground Railroad, a constant reminder that true leadership is often found not in the halls of power, but in the most dangerous corners of the battlefield. From a shackled slave named Minty to the celebrated military commander known as Moses, her lives in time proves that one dedicated soul can fundamentally shift the moral landscape of a nation. If you found yourself captivated by the journey of this extraordinary leader, please like this video and subscribe to Lives in Time. Your support helps us uncover more vital and untold biographies, from the ancient empires of China to the revolutionary heart of America. Click the notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into the figures who truly shaped the world. And feel free to leave a comment about who should we feature in our next video.